The room was dark. Too dark. The only light came from the small crack under the door. The air was heavy, and the faint sound of the television from the living room hummed like a warning. 10-year-old Zoe lay still on the thin mattress on the floor, clutching her torn blanket. Her aunt's husband, Uncle Bill, had told her earlier that night to sleep in the spare room because her cousins were sick and needed space on the bed. She didn't think much of it at the time, but now, she felt uneasy. Her heart pounded in her chest when she heard the door creak open slowly. She froze. She knew it was him. It could only be him. Zoe, his voice was a whisper, but it felt like thunder in her ears. Are you awake? She stayed silent, praying he would leave. Maybe he just wanted to check on her. Maybe this was nothing. But then she heard the soft click of the door locking behind him. Her stomach turned. Don't be scared, he said, stepping closer. His shadow loomed over her. She could smell the alcohol on his breath. It made her want to vomit. It's just me. Zoe didn't move. She didn't speak. She thought if she pretended to be asleep, he might go away. But he didn't. Instead, he knelt beside her, his rough hand brushing against her face. She wanted to scream, but her voice was trapped in her throat. "SHHH," he whispered, pulling the blanket away from her. "You're such a good girl, Zoe. So obedient. That's why I like you." She tried to wiggle away, but his grip tightened. "Don't fight me," he said, his voice now cold and serious. "You don't want to make me angry, do you?" Tears streamed down her face as he pinned her down. "Please, Uncle Bill," she begged, her voice trembling. "Please don't hurt me." But he didn't listen. I see you're enjoying the story. Please subscribe if you want to continue seeing interesting stories like this. Have you subscribed? Okay, now back to the story. That night changed everything. Zoe didn't tell anyone. Who would believe her? Uncle Bill was a respected man in the village. He was the one who paid her school fees, bought food for the house, and even helped her mother back in the village. And her aunt worshipped him like a god. If Zoe spoke up, she feared no one would believe her. Worse, she was afraid they would blame her. From that day on, she avoided him as much as she could. But he didn't stop. Whenever her aunt went to the market or fell asleep early, Uncle Bill would find his way to Zoe. It happened again and again. Each time, he would tell her the same thing: if you tell anyone, you destroy this family. Your aunt will hate you. Your mother will hate you. You have no one. His words sank into her like poison. She felt dirty, ashamed, and trapped. She started to withdraw from everyone. At school, she stopped talking to her friends. At home, she stayed quiet, always afraid of what might happen next. Her grades dropped, but no one seemed to notice. To them, she was just a shy, quiet girl. One day, after months of enduring the horror, she finally mustered the courage to tell her aunt. She thought maybe, just maybe, her aunt would protect her. But when she spoke the words, her aunt slapped her across the face. "How dare you accuse my husband of such a thing?" her aunt screamed. "You're just a stupid little girl trying to ruin my marriage." That was the day Zoe realized she was truly alone. At 13, Zoe ran away from home. She didn't have a plan. She just knew she couldn't stay there any longer. She boarded a bus to the city with the little money she had saved from doing chores for neighbors. The city was loud and overwhelming, but she didn't care. All she wanted was to disappear. For weeks, she slept on the streets, begging for food and money. It wasn't long before she met Mama Titi, a woman who ran a brothel in a rundown part of town. Mama Titi promised her food, shelter, and protection, things Zoe desperately needed. But there was a price. "You're a pretty girl," Mama Titi said, eyeing her. You'll make good money here. Men will pay anything for a young, fresh girl like you. Zoe hesitated at first, but she didn't see another way. She was already broken. What difference did it make? She told herself it was just survival. She wasn't doing it because she wanted to, she was doing it because she had no choice. By the time Zoe was 16, she had become one of the most sought-after girls in Mama Titi's brothel. Men came from all over to see her. Some were kind, others were cruel, but to her, they were all the same. She had learned to detach herself, to numb the pain. She buried her shame deep inside and told herself this was her life now. But no matter how much money she made, no matter how many men she entertained, she couldn't escape the memories of Uncle Bill. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face. She heard his voice. She felt his hands. It haunted her, like a ghost that refused to leave. One rainy evening, as Zoe stood on the corner waiting for her next client, a familiar face appeared out of the crowd. It was Uncle Bill. He was older now, with a bit of grey in his beard, but she recognized him instantly. Her heart raced as anger and fear bubbled inside her. He didn't recognize her at first. Why would he? To him, she was just another girl on the streets. But when their eyes met, she saw the moment he realized who she was. His face turned pale, and he quickly looked away, disappearing into the crowd. That night, Zoe couldn't sleep. Seeing him again brought back everything she had tried to bury. She thought about confronting him, about shouting his name in the streets and exposing him for the monster he was. But she knew it wouldn't change anything. No one had believed her then, and no one would believe her now. By the time Zoe turned 20, her body was tired, and her spirit was broken. She had seen and experienced things no one should ever have to endure. But deep down, a part of her still longed for something better. She wanted to be free from the streets, from her past, from the pain that had consumed her life. One day, she decided to leave the brothel. She didn't know where she was going or what she would do, but she knew she couldn't keep living like this. She wanted to start over, to find a way to heal. As she walked away from Mama Titi's brothel for the last time, she thought about the little girl she used to be, the girl who loved to sing, who dreamed of becoming a teacher, who believed the world was a good place. That girl was gone now, but Zoe hoped that maybe, just maybe, she could find her again. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope. This story is not just Zoe's story. It's the story of many girls whose voices are silenced, whose pain is ignored, and whose lives are stolen. But Zoe's story doesn't have to end in despair. Healing is possible. Justice is possible. And for every girl like Zoe, there is hope. This story challenges us to reflect on our own actions and responsibilities. Are we listening to the vulnerable? Are we protecting the innocent? Are we standing up against injustice, even when it's uncomfortable? Let Zoe's story remind us that silence enables abuse, but compassion, action, and justice can save lives. For anyone who has suffered abuse, know that it is not your fault. Speak up, seek help, and know that healing is possible. And for those who hear the cries of others, do not ignore them, because you might be their only hope. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the story. Please like, share and subscribe to the channel if you want to continue seeing interesting stories like this. To watch more videos like this one, click the right side of your screen to watch any of these two interesting videos. See you in the next video.